Welcome everybody. Now we come to the second part of movable and immovable thing. The last time when we talked about movable and immovable thing, I highlighted that besides the obvious difference of something that is movable that you can carry around as compared to something that you cannot carry around as in it is immovable, besides this one obvious difference, there are other subtle legal differences that are important and you should know. Now, I'm only going to write the key words to the differences. There are 4 differences. I will only write the key words of this. I will not write everything. Okay, this is explained in your book on pages 6 and 7 of the book. Alright, on pages 6 and 7 of the book, my book. Alright, there are 4 important legal differences. I will only write the keywords for this. The first difference is the ownership right, or you call the ownership title. If you use the legal language, they say ownership title or ownership right, or in Thai they call ownership title, they call it kamasit. Now, the difference between movable and immovable is this. For an immovable thing, alright, an immovable thing, there is always someone, some person, which has the ownership right, the ownership title to the immovable thing. There always is an owner with an immovable thing. Right? The ownership for an immovable thing comes in under 3 choices. It could be it's privately owned by a person. Alright? A person here, I mean a human being or a company or a juristic person. Alright? We will come to the meaning of the word, specific meaning of the word person later on in another lecture. Alright? It can be owned by a private person, you and me, you or me, or a company or any kind of juristic person. Or the second choice of this kind of ownership of immovable thing could be it is owned by the state, the country, owned by all taxpayers who pay their taxes. For example, forest land, the roads, the bridges, the motorways. Alright? Okay, mountains, reservoirs. These are public owned, as in it is owned by every taxpayer of the country. A third choice of ownership title for an immovable thing is the property is owned by the king, or they call it the crown property, ทรัพย์สินส่วนพระมหากษัตริย์ the crown property. So there's 3 choices. It's privately owned by you and me, or you or me, or a juristic person or a company, or it's owned by the public, all taxpayers who pay taxes. The roads, for example, is a property that is an immovable thing that is publicly owned, or it could be owned by the crown. Alright? Comparing with a movable thing. A movable thing, in contrast, can have an owner. It can also have no owners. For example, you come to the university today, you see a cell phone sitting on the table in the canteen in the morning. Alright? In the evening today, you see the phone still sitting there. Tomorrow when you come to university, you still see the phone sitting there. Alright, the phone. That cell phone may have an owner at a particular point in time. But after 1 week, after a few days, that phone is still sitting there. Nobody comes and claims the phone. That is an example of a movable thing that has become no owner. Alright, a movable thing has a possibility where it has no owner. I'm just giving an example here. Of course, you can say, oh, Ajahn, what about if the property is taken by someone later on who is not the owner? Would that be stolen property? Okay, maybe. But I'm not talking about that case. I'm just using this cell phone example to show you an incident whereby a movable thing can have no ownership status. Okay? So, a movable thing can have an owner. It can also have no owners. In comparison with an immovable thing always have an owner. Always. You will not be ownerless for an immovable. But a movable, it is possible to be ownerless. Alright, it can be both cases. It can be having an owner. It can also be not having an owner. That's one difference. Okay. The other difference between an immovable thing and a movable thing is proof of ownership. Proof of ownership. How does one show that one is the owner of the thing? Whether it is immovable or movable. How do you show that you own the thing? How do you prove that you're the owner of the immovable thing? How do you prove that you're the owner of the movable thing? Well, this is again different. For movable thing, it's very easy to prove that you are the owner, for example, of the movable thing. The ownership of a movable thing is proved by possession, crop krong, or using it. If you are the owner of the thing, then you will be the one using it. If you are the owner of the car, then you would be the one driving the car. If you're the owner of the table will be in your house. It will not be in my house or somebody else's house. It will be in your house. You will be the one possessing it, using it. That's the way you show that you're the owner, right, of a movable thing. But when it comes to immovable, you can't take the land home and say this is my land. Or you can't take the condominium unit home and say this is my condominium unit. Or the house home and say this is my lovely house. Right? So, immovable thing, you cannot prove the ownership by just possession. You can only prove the ownership by a contract in writing and registration to show that you're the owner. Because if not, anybody can point to a land out there and say, that beautiful piece of land, plot of land is mine. Then another person can come in and say, no, that plot of land is mine. And another person can also come in and say, no, it's mine. Well, whose land is it? Right? Because you can't carry the land home and say it's yours. So the proof of ownership in terms of immovable thing has to be done in writing and has to be done by registration. This is also explained in the book. Alright, and of course, very close to the difference number 2 is also the third difference, which is what I use the keyword here, legal form. The form here I refer to document form, เอกสาร document. In other words, okay, to get ownership of the immovable thing, there must be a document in writing contract for sale and purchase of land, for example, contract for sale and purchase of condominium unit, for example, of house, for example, right? And also there must be the registration in the title deed or the channel. The channel is also, or the title deed is also the form. Whereas for a movable thing, there's no need for there to be any written document or registration or any kind of a form. There's no need for that for movables. So this is another difference. Alright, it actually ties in very closely with proof of ownership. Because immovable thing, you need to prove the ownership with a form, with something in writing. In fact, more than that, something registered. Okay. Now, the last difference takes a bit of explanation. I use the keyword adverse possession. Adverse possession. Now, this, before I explain the difference on this adverse possession, before I explain the difference on adverse possession between immovable thing and movable thing, I better explain what is adverse possession in the first place. Okay, what is the meaning of adverse possession in the first place? Okay, adverse possession is a law on property, right, dealing with the concept that when the true owner of a particular property disregard or discard their property for a long time, don't even give a damn, don't even care about their property or thing. It doesn't matter whether it's immovable or movable, okay? It doesn't matter. Anything. The true owner of this thing completely discard their property. Don't tend to it, don't care about it. While during the time of their discarding or disregarding the thing, someone else who is not the owner, use the thing. Stay on the land, for example. Stay in the house, for example. This person is not the owner, but stay at the house, stay at the land. While the true owner doesn't care, doesn't even go and look and see, oh, somebody is using my land. Oh, somebody is using my house. The true owner doesn't know it because the true owner doesn't care about his, hers, or its thing. But somebody else's is using it, making good use of it at the same time. Alright? Now, the law on adverse possession say that this kind of using by someone who is not the owner of a property that is completely disregarded by a true owner provides certain rights for the person who is using it to get ownership title. Because the real owner doesn't care about the thing. Should the real owner still have the right to be the owner? Where at the same time, somebody else wants to make better use of the thing. Alright? Now, it's not so easy. It's not just because I'm not the owner, I'm using it, therefore I become the owner. No. There are certain conditions that the law set that the person who is using it, the one who is not the owner, would have to meet before they can request the court for a court order, right, to be issued to them for them to get ownership rights. The condition that the person using it has to satisfy are 3 conditions laid down by the law. First, that person must have open and peaceful possession of the thing. Open and peaceful possession means, for example, use an obvious example land. Alright? I stay on someone else's land. I go there, I park my car there every day. I maybe even build a little house on it. Every day I stay there, right? It's not like at night I go to the land, I pitch the tent. In the morning when the sun comes out, I keep my tent and I disappear. No, I don't do that. I stay there openly during the day. The neighbors, people passing by the street, the road, they see me using it. And nobody says anything. Right? Maybe even the owner sees it, doesn't say anything. Okay, this is what it means by open, เปิดเผย and peaceful possession. ครอบครองโดยสงบ Nobody comes and say, get the out of my land. Alright? Nobody comes and say that. Okay, this is one condition that has to be met. Okay, I put A. Then there is the second condition. They also have to be satisfied before you can request the court for a court order to get ownership. And this is an uninterrupted period of possession. Uninterrupted period of possession. That means the person who is using the land, possessing the land, has to be on that land or on that movable thing, right? It applies to both kinds of things, for a long enough time. Certainly not using it only for 1 month, and they don't use it anymore, right? It has to be using for quite a long period of time. And this long period has also got to be a period that cannot be interrupted. In other words, it cannot have any breaks in between. For example, if you use it for 1 year, you have to continuously use it for 1 year. You cannot use it for 2 months and then you stop using it for a month, and then you go back to use it for another 3 months, and then you stop using it for 2 weeks, and then you go back there to use it again for another few months. No breaks in between the period. A continuous period. That's what it means by uninterrupted period. Alright, of using it, of possession of the thing. Now this is where the difference between immovable thing and movable thing will come in. The difference is here. For a movable thing, the uninterrupted period has to be at least 5 years. For a movable thing. A movable thing. Right? For an immovable thing, the uninterrupted period has to be at least 10 years. Immovable thing. This is the difference between a movable thing and an immovable thing as far as adverse possession is concerned. Alright? Now, it's not finished in terms of the condition to prove adverse possession or to prove that the court that you have the right to be the owner. Right? There's one more condition that has to be made. I put it as C. This is difficult to prove. Intention. เจตนา to be the owner. Intention to be the owner. Right? You have to be able to show that during this period, whether it's movable thing 5 years at least or immovable thing 10 years at least, during this period, you have in your mind the intention to be the owner one day. One day means after this 5 years or after this 10 years. You have all the time the intention. Now this is not so easy to show to the court. Don't forget, A, B, and C, all three has to be satisfied in order for the court to grant a court order to give you the right to be the owner of the immovable thing or the movable thing. Alright, so it's not so easy just using it because somebody else who is the real owner don't use it. It automatically gives you the right to have adverse possession and the court will give a court order for you to be the owner. No, not so easy. You have to meet this condition, A, B, C, open and peaceful possession. You must be able to show to the court, you must be able to satisfy the court that while you're using it openly. It's not like you're going there to use it at night only when nobody sees you or few people sees you. Right? You also have to show peaceful possession, which means nobody comes and tell you to get out of the property or return the property. This is peaceful possession. And also it has to be a certain amount of time. Not one day, not a few months, years. Years of using it or possessing the thing. For movable, 5 years. For immovable, 10 years. And also you must be able to show cetana, intention to be the owner during this period of time. Now this is not so easy to prove. So one way you can show that you have the intention all along is, for example, if you're using somebody else's land for a period of 10 years. Every one of those 10 years you take a photograph of your using the land. For example, you have park your car on the land, right? You could take a photograph of your car on that land, okay, and there's a date on the photograph over the 10 years period. This could show that all along you have the intention to be the owner, right? You could also bring neighbors, right, in the neighboring properties, neighboring things, neighboring houses, neighboring land, to show that and this neighbor would go to the court, these neighbors will go to the court and say, yes, we saw him using the land for many years, all right, and nobody comes and tell him to get out. Okay, open and peaceful possession. So the difference between, if you want to talk about movable and immovable thing, okay, the difference is here. For movable is 5 years possession, 5 years using the property. For immovable is 10 years of using the property. So these are the 4 other differences between movable thing and immovable thing. Alright, they are important for you on as far as this subject is concerned because they are connected to contracts. Later on when we talk about contracts, when we talk about people are buying and selling something or some property, when you say you're buying something, then this kind of differences between buying an immovable thing or a movable thing would come in. So it's important to bear in mind these differences. As I said earlier on in your book, these differences are on page 6 and page 7. Alright, I think I better write down here so that you can have a direct reference to your book. This one is excuse me. This one is 1.2.1a of your book. Okay, this one is 1.2.1b of your book. Proof of ownership 1.2.1c of your book. And this one is 1.2.1d of your book. A, B, C, D. Have a look at your book, page 6 and page 7. That's all I have to talk on the differences between movable thing and immovable thing.